Well, what we are trying to do right now, Miss Trash Can Vexa, what we are trying to do... Where's your trash can? My trash can is behind me, filled with 3D printer filament because I spent 2 weeks printing one project. That's my bad. You don't get to be slime too. Fuck off. You're so shiny now.
You're right. I need to be blue instead of red.
It's at least some contrast. Olby Wanks, thank you very much for the follow. Ginger Toffee, thank you for redeeming your points for an whoa. All of those. Okay. Gloomy Boogie says, oh my god, Harry Potter is literally book slop. I mean, kind of, but let's go through this. We are going to try to take several problematic things from Harry Potter and see how we can change them to be functional and not filled with dumb, hate-ridden bitch slop, which the goal here is not to hyper transform everything. The goal here is to see what is the minimal amount of change required to make something less shitty. And for some of these, it's kind of interesting. For some of these, it's really hard because it's fundamental. So let's go ahead and get on the very first one. There's really not a whole lot of representation in the Harry Potter franchise that is not weirdly problematic. Like, one of your few black characters is Kingsley Shacklebolt. I don't know why you would name your one of very few black people Shacklebolt, but you did. And then one of your only Asian characters is Cho Chang, which feels like you're just doing the thing where you take your fingers and pull your eyes apart to say the word Chinese. Like, it just feels really shitty. Fennec says, maybe have your friends' pronouns, please. Yeah, that is entirely on you. Not you, Fennec,
she,
but
her.
that's on Yoru.
She, her, or unless you want me to be really silly and go Shadow the Hedgehog, then that's a different,
Yeah, Shadow the Hedgehog's a different gender. Bravo needs bacon. Thank you for the 196 tip. I'm assuming that's a media share. I'll get to that here in a bit. So, I don't know. The only Jewish character in Hogwarts is Anthony Goldstein. Like, I feel like just renaming these characters to not the most stereotype of stereotype fixes that, right?
So out of curiosity, did you know that Shacklebolt is an actual surname that originated in England?
Did not know that.
Yeah, because it originally meant to shake, and it referred to a type of fastener or projectile, meaning that it had a possible connection to occupations involving the fastening of materials or use of bolts in construction or weaponry.
Okay, so you're saying there is a chance that this is not 100% a racist thing, even though a shacklebolt is also a threaded pin of a shackle that allows you to link multiple chains together.
Yeah, no, like it's definitely, it still has its, like, it's racist, like, like it definitely has racism there either way, right? Because, like, just ask, like, the whole thing with, like, Cho Chang, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, technically speaking, there are people out there that have had, like, the surname Chang in Chinese, which is a very common one. But Cho is a Korean surname, so...
Yeah, the issue is that it makes... So, like,
yeah,
it doesn't make sense for any culture that exists in Asia because those names, generally speaking, come from different cultures. So it sounds like JK is just like, well, this is the Asian representation, and then you've got a Korean person, a Vietnamese person, a Japanese person, and a Chinese person, all kind of looking at each other, going, well, which one of us is this supposed to be? Like, I don't know which one of this is supposed to be.
I mean, technically, you could just say it's basically 3 Asians in a trench coat.
I mean, technically it is, and that's not great in general.
No, it's not.
But
No, it's not.
So definitely, like, research your character names a little bit. If you're going to have them from a different area of the world than where you originate, then do a little bit of research. At least have an editor look at it and be like, yeah, maybe this one needs to be changed a bit. Get somebody who is from that culture to say, like, yeah, this is a pretty common name here, or it's a rare name, but you hear it. Like, a woman's name being Martha in the United States. It's not a very common name here right now, but it's a plausible name. It is a plausible name that you may name somebody. So that is perfectly plausible. But again, it's a bit of a rare name.
Like, I would say, I don't think the Harry Potter series ever really dives into how many foreign students goes into Hogwarts. So for all we know, characters like Cho Chang could actually have just been born in Europe, and the chances of her actually having a name like that would not make sense. Like, she'd be more likely to have a name like Martha than she is to have the name Cho Chang, you know?
Yeah, it's like that name. I don't want to focus too much on this one because I feel like this is one of the more surface level critiques for Harry Potter.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But the one that I want to run this by you to see if this fixes it. The two that we had talked about in chat already. One was about the goblins and the anti-Semitic tropes there are with the goblins in Harry Potter. So my hot take on this is that most fantasy has anti-Semitic tropes with goblins. This is not a uniquely Harry Potter thing, right? So the biggest thing is the goblins being the bankers. That's one of the big things that you can point to. And I know that in the movie there was a symbol that looked like it had looked like a Star of David, and that was one of the things people were pointed to. But I'm focusing mainly on the books for this. So for your goblin tropes, a lot of fantasy uses goblins as bankers. World of Warcraft being a really big example of this. Warcraft has used goblins as three things: mafiosos, bankers, and engineers. Those are the things that they are. They either invent stuff that blows the hell up, or they run the mob, or they run the bank, which is also just the mob, right? So that's
right.
So that's not the worst thing in the world. All you have to do for that particular trope is increase the representation on both sides of the algorithm. So within the Harry Potter series, we always see goblins working for Gringotts. That's just what we see them doing for the most part. So just show us goblins in other areas of society, and show us more people working for Gringotts on a mass scale, not just every single banker was a goblin, but that banker's a goblin, that banker's a human, that one's an elf.
Right.
Like, doing those things distances the goblins from the trope enough while still being able to have Gringotts being goblin run, and Gringotts and the stolen treasures of Gringotts being what they are, because that's a huge plot point in book 7. Who's supposed to be the one that actually owns the Sword of Gryffindor? Who's the one who actually owns the Cup of Helga Hufflepuff? That shit being wizards stole that stuff from goblins is a big plot point. So this allows you to keep that plot point without keeping the goblins as overtly anti-Semitic. But I want to get your thoughts on that, see if that's far enough, or maybe it has to go farther.
Alternatively, considering where Gringotts actually is stored, why not introduce dwarfs? Like, have dwarfs working in Gringotts alongside goblins? Because dwarfs also have...
They're miners of treasure, right? Like, that's a big set. That's a big thing.
Yeah, they're miners of treasure, but they're also really greedy as well, and they like to hoard gold as well.
And that's a very Tolkien thing that the dwarves did.
So, like, what if they just went and had a mixture of the goblins and the dwarfs there? Because, you know, someone needed to mine it out.
Instead of having a vast array of races that are working at Gringotts, you have the dwarves and the goblins working there specifically, and because of their greedy tendencies, they don't want other people working at Gringotts. but
Yeah.
would you still have the goblins working in other areas of society to get them to distance them from the trope a little bit?
I definitely would have them working in different areas of society. However, on the flip side, that could also make it worse for the trope, considering like if goblins are meant to be a representation of Jewish people, and that's supposed to be a representation of like, you know, them and money and all that stereotype. If they're in more areas on the flip side, wouldn't that just show like, oh, the Jews are taking over, the Jews are in everything? Couldn't that also make that worse?
So the Jews are in everything trope mostly comes from Hollywood and banking combined. It's about them having influence in those areas. I think that it's divorced enough if you have goblins in lower areas of society. So like if you always show a goblin in an area of influence or as like the Grima worm tongue of somebody's royal court, like if you're doing that, then yeah, that gives the conspiracy theorists their grain of chocolate.
Yeah.
But if you have them in the lower echelons of society, just mingling about and not having any actual power, I think that divorces them far enough away from that concept. Also,
that is true.
Nia Tatsushi, thank you very much for the follow.
That is true. Then I mean, like, yeah, no, having him just be in different areas of like in different industries in different parts of the world. So
like give me a goblin wand maker, right? Where, because we know that goblins have their own kind of magic in Harry Potter. There's a whole thing about goblins not needing wands to do magic. So if a goblin wand maker makes a wand, why would there not be some interesting properties that come with that wand? It's a little more wild magic-y. The wand may rebel against you a little bit, but it may have a little more power. I don't know.
Doesn't that also go into isn't that also going into the other issue where they're not actually allowed to use wands because their magic gets enhanced with wands?
I think if we allow them into that area of society, you also have to fix that part of JK's writing, right? Because there's a lot of human wizard superiority in Harry Potter that needs to be kind of chipped away at in order to have people in other areas of society, because it feels very much like she wrote the goblins being the way they did, saying, no, you don't understand. They have to be kept under lock and key. Otherwise, bad things happen to the wizards, which feels like its own kind of problematic. Like, so, like, the biggest thing is, if a goblin's magic gets enhanced by a wand, so what? You have like, at the highest echelon, you might have a goblin Dumbledore, but we have a Dumbledore at home, so...
But on the flip side, actually, there's one thing, the whole history of the goblins, since that's also tied into this, was there anywhere that they ever actually mentioned goblin history other than, like, in Hogwarts Legacy?
Griphook talks about it a little bit in book 7 when he's explaining the history of the Sword of Gryffindor. So there's a little bit of it, but there's not, like, that's another issue I guess you could point out too, is that within the lore of the Harry Potter books themselves, right, just books 1 through 7, we don't actually get a lot of world building, like not even just for the goblins,
no,
but at all. I think that's one of my biggest criticisms. Full disclosure, I love the Harry Potter books. It's why I'm I'm not coming to bat for them right now, but I am saying, yeah, there's all this problematic shit in there. Here's how we would try to fix it. I love those books because they are a part of my childhood.
Yeah.
So one of my biggest critiques of them, aside from the fact that they're written by a transphobic bigot who needs to slip on a banana peel, aside from that, one of my biggest criticisms is we never explore the world of Harry Potter. We don't. We explore Hogwarts, and we explore a couple of blank landscapes about 3 or 4 times, and we explore Diagon Alley. And when we explore blank landscapes, they are backdrops to plot. So a lot of that happened in book 7 when the characters were largely not in Hogwarts. Or it's stuff that happens in book 4 when they're talking about, the World Cup that's going on. So they find an area that they can enchant to make the World Cup happen. I guess there's one area we explore a little bit, mostly in book 5 and 7, and that's the Ministry of Magic. But a government building is not a location that I am so interested in compared to, like, an area that actually has a bunch of giants in it that we know exists because Hagrid went there to negotiate with the giants, or an area filled with dragons that we know exists because that's an area that Ron's family has to frequent because I forget the brother's name, but one of their brothers works with dragons.
I think it was Percy.
No, Percy was the one who went on to work in government.
Fuck, I don't know then. But
Charlie.
Honestly,
Charlie.
I know. Yeah, Charlie. I know, the whole thing with the Fantastic Beasts series kind of gave a little bit more, but it still wasn't enough. And I guess in a way, it wasn't considered important to the series, to the story that was being told. So why focus on a detail that ultimately only serves as a plot point, I guess?
Also, if I'm being honest, having watched all the Fantastic Beasts films, they only really do 3 things. One, what if a wizard had autism? That's the major plot of the entire series. What if a wizard had autism? This is your main character. Watch them go about life. I already have a series about what if a wizard had autism, and it's called The Dresden Files. And it's great.
God.
But there's also what does a Nazi regime look like in the Harry Potter universe? Because that's what's his face. I can't remember the villain's name for the life of me. Grindelwald. That's what Grindelwald was doing. It was a very cartoon caricature of the of the Nazi regime, but it was very much that, right? And then the last thing is, let's go ahead and make good on that tweet that J.K. Rowling made years ago, back when she wasn't a hated individual, where she said Dumbledore was gay. Let's go ahead and have payoff for that in movie 3. Like, those are the 3 things that Fantastic Beasts explores. I have spoiled the entirety of it for you. That's all that truly happens in there. Confirmation Dumbledore is gay, a Nazi regime is built and fails, and a wizard who definitely has autism does his special interest, and his special interest saves the world.
Also, it's interesting what Finnick just said. There isn't a lot of disability representation. Something I'm kind of curious about. Maybe I'm giving too much credit, but in a world like Harry Potter, who's to say that, magic, they don't have a lot of magic that has the ability to just help with disabilities? Because, think about how they have the whole polyjuice potion, and it literally changes your entire body. So they have potions that regrow bones. So I would assume that disabilities in the wizarding world would be a lot easier to take care of.
It's weird, right? So, we know that broken bones can be instantly healed, or they can be taken away and regrown if something goes bad with them, right? Because that happens in book 2. But why do some wizards have glasses? Why do they not? So, okay, to take another wizarding series that is much better, to use Dresden Files. I don't know if you've read Dresden Files. Okay, so in Dresden Files, there is a reason given as to why wizards cannot help with certain disabilities. In the Harry Potter series, the reason given largely is we don't want to fix the problems of muggles because we're assholes. That's the reason that's mostly given. But in the Dresden Files, it is when you are doing any type of complex magic, the smaller you are making it and the closer it is to the human body, the more shit can go wrong. So let's say that you tried to use magic to give somebody LASIK. That's basically what you would be trying to do. In the Harry Potter series, that would just be a bit of spell work that you would have to learn and then execute a few times, and then it would happen. In the Dresden Files, if a bead of sweat went on your eyebrow in the wrong way while you were trying to do that, you may accidentally explode somebody's head, because that's how hard it is to manhandle certain forms of magic in that series, which ends up being a good limiting factor. Harry Potter doesn't have such limiting factors, so...
No, especially when you think about Wormtail, because, like, Voldemort had Wormtail cut his hand off, and then Voldemort
he just made
literally
a new
uses
one.
Magic to make a new hand. And I, like, so I would assume you could do that if you were born without legs. I'm sure you could just use magic to magic you legs,
right?
Yeah, like, for real, like, maybe with glasses it's just a lifestyle choice at that point.
Vanguard Christie says this is why Dresden uses guns. Yeah, no, one of the reasons Dresden uses guns is that there's also the limiting factor of, like, magic exhausting you. And some people doing things like being dampening magic, which, again, is not a thing that works in Harry Potter. If you want the killing curse to hit somebody, it just hits somebody. There is no limiting factor. It's even said in the books that shields and other counter magics don't work on it.
But don't worry, the power of love does.
But if you do use a spell like that in the Dresden Files, it exhausts the shit out of you, and so Dresden carries around a 45. Because he's like, yeah, sometimes I can't cast a fireball at something. That's what I cast gun. Prepare to meet God.
Halo. Why would you need to make Hogwarts wheelchair accessible when you have Wingardium Leviosa?
Halo says it's easier to give people new legs and make hard too much. So, like, that's another thing. Hogwarts, as a, like, wheelchair accessibility is important in an environment where people are in wheelchairs, but we rarely see any wizards in wheelchairs. I think it's likely because they can repair that kind of stuff. At least we see that they can repair that kind of stuff, but they can't repair vision, and then they won't repair anything from muggles ever, which makes no sense whatsoever. Yield Pinecone says, can wheelhouse, so I'm guessing wheelchair-bound people, can they use brooms? So I would say probably not, only because part of what lets you balance on a broom is the ability to grip it with your legs.
Wait, hang on. I got something for you on this one.
Okay.
Because you bring up the broom, right? But yet, I would like to bring up one Sir Alistair Moody's broom for you for a second.
Okay. I can't display anything you throw at me, by the way.
I know, I'm just showing it to you.
Okay.
So you can see.
Let me go ahead. Vinyl says, what's the title referring to? A thing that I'm going to get to here in a minute.
So.
Okay.
That's Mad-Eye Moody's broom.
It's got a lot of guardrails on it.
It has a chair on it, so a wheelchair person could fly a broom if they wanted to.
I mean, I guess that is fair if you wanted to do that. But again, in the Harry Potter series, we see all of the components required to regrow any limb, unless we don't see anybody in Harry Potter that has cerebral palsy.
No, we don't.
And the question becomes, just as an example, this is one of those ones that, like, you wouldn't necessarily have to fix or not fix, but let's say you had a wizard in the Harry Potter series who had cerebral palsy. Could magic fix that? And if not, would that be somebody who is forever bound to, say, a polyjuice potion so that they can be in the body of somebody who doesn't have that disability? Like, how does the polyjuice potion function with disabilities, right?
I mean, I think with the polyjuice potion, it just affects your appearance. But if you have something like cerebral palsy, because of how it has an impact, it might. Because then again, when we saw Barty Crouch, use the Polyjuice potion to be moody,
it cut his leg off, basically.
And in one of his eyes.
Yeah, it put him into the exact body of that person with that person's ailments. Which begs the question, why does Moody not have... why did he just not grow a leg magically? Because we know that they can do that. Unless, well, hold on. There is a way that would have happened. I'm dumb. This one actually is accounted for in the literature. If your limb or what have you is removed by a curse, there is a chance of not being able to grow it back, because it's just kind of a thing that curses do in Harry Potter. And he was an Auror, so the likelihood of him getting cursed was kind of high.
Yeah, that's actually something I was going to bring up, is magic resistance, basically.
Yeah, so I guess in the specific scenario where you've had a limb cursed off, then you don't get that back. And that now suddenly we find ourselves back into the world of, well, you probably need to have Hogwarts be wheelchair accessible, because if a kid gets their leg cursed off by some dumb Death Eater, and they are walking around on crutches for the rest of their life, what are you just gonna say? Yeah, go up the several flights of stairs. Fuck you. That feels like a shitty thing to do for a school.
I mean, you could also bring up with schools, what happens if you're a kid that's poor, and you can't afford your books?
That is another thing that's weird. So Diagon Alley has an area with used books. We know that because that's where Molly had to get a lot of the books for the Weasleys. But why do the kids have to buy their books every single semester? Why are you just fucking poor families like that? Also, the concept of having poor families in Harry Potter is weird to me, because they can conjure water, they can conjure wood, they can create damn near anything that they want with magic, and they can fix anything they want with magic, because again, not a whole lot of limiting factors. So why does poverty exist in Harry Potter?
That would be going into how does the economy for the Wizarding World work in conjunction with the rest of the world, because they're using an entire different currency compared to other places in Europe. So it's how many sickles, how many knuts actually convert into British pounds, for example.
They do have a conversion rate for that, though, because that does get confirmed whenever Arthur goes through the ministry to go into the real world to do things like hire taxi cabs and stuff. He does get an exchange rate for that currency. So we know that there is an exchange rate of some kind.
But on the flip side, it's still kind of weird, because what does an actual job for a wizard pay? Because he freaking works in the Ministry of Magic. Shouldn't he be being paid pretty damn well because he works in the ministry?
So there are a couple of things to throw there. One, again, I think the concept of anybody being poor in the wizarding world, it just doesn't make any fucking sense to me. But within the confines of the literature, he is a single income, bringing in money for a household of far too many children. I feel like that's the reason why, is that he's having to single-handedly afford food and books and house repairs and everything for every single person that is in that house.
But on the flip side, they do live on a large enough plot of land that they could have farms.
I mean, I think they do have farms. I know that this is not canon material, but in the Chamber of Secrets game, the farm of the Weasleys is an actual location you have to denome.
Yeah.
So,
but then also, what about the Black family?
Oh, Sirius Black?
Yeah, because like you saw his house, and his house is a pretty decent size, if not, being able to fit the entire Weasley family into it and then some.
True, they were a rich family, though, because they were an old money family.
But on the flip side, they still had to have someone bringing in money, though.
Well, again, okay, so if they're an old money family, they don't actually have to have that. That's the misconception.
I mean, that's true.
That's the misconception that happens when you're used to working for your money. Like, we're both streamers, right? So our job is waggling a tip jar and hoping that people throw donations in so we can eat. That's what we do for a living. But if you
waggle a tip jar?
I have a little tip thing right under my boobies right now, so I guess. But or are you saying you wiggle your butt and that makes it happen?
I mean, my butt does have jiggle physics.
Okay, well, that makes one of us. But so in the real world, at a certain level of base money, you no longer need to make money. If you have, as an example, $100 million, you can live off of the interest from that forever. If you have $2 or $3 million, you can live off of the investments from that, barring market crashes, effectively forever. There is a threshold that once you have that amount of money, you no longer need an income. And I say this with full confidence because I have a friend who is a millionaire and does actually live entirely off of the investments. So like I'm quoting from his life, and he got that from an accident though, which like is not enviable. He can't walk. But still.
So on the flip side, I don't think we ever really see any other poor families other than the Weasleys. So how common is it to be poor in the Harry Potter universe?
It's hard to say. We don't really get an idea of the income for anybody in the Harry Potter universe except for the Weasleys and Harry. That's all. Like those are the and the Malfoys. Like we know what the uber rich look like in Harry Potter. We know what the poor look like in Harry Potter only because we've seen one uber rich family, one poor family, and we've seen one family that no longer exists that was rich when it did exist, right? Like we don't have a lot of examples of this to see why this happens. Also, yeah, we never see any, well, actually we do, so Fennec, we do technically see a middle-class family, but only for the briefest of bits because it's Harry. Harry's family, his mom and father, lived in a very, very modest suburban area, effectively. They were essentially UK middle class, but they died, so they don't count. Jasta says, wouldn't Hermione not be considered wealthy since she has Muggle family and no magic money? Again, Muggle money has a conversion rate to wizard money. We know this because we see it in the books whenever Arthur is getting this stuff exchanged, and we know this because that is the only way that Hermione is able to afford her books as well, as far as I remember. There is an exchange rate between British pounds and wizard money.
I mean, yeah, Harry is also actually rich, though.
Halo says, wait, isn't he actually rich? So Harry has the equivalent of a very, very strong nest egg account. That's what he has. What he has is nothing compared to what the Black family had, and it's nothing compared to what the Malfoys had. So if you consider that, like, the middle class in the United States are people earning anywhere between, right now, 50,000 and 130,000, that's your American middle class, effectively. They can sock away a savings account that is very, very big, but at the same time, if you had a reason to drain that constantly, it would be gone. So, like, think about it from Harry's perspective. He sees a fuck ton of money, and the only expenses he has are what he has to buy on the train ride in, what he has to buy in Diagon Alley, and after that, he's got the pocket change he uses when he goes to the village that's right outside Hogwarts, and that's it. Stargazer says, no, actually, Pottermore mentioned that his money came from royalties from his grandfather's invention of a hair potion. Again, I'm talking about the books. Because Pottermore as a website served for the longest time to patch over a lot of problems that exist within the writing of the Harry Potter franchise. That's why I didn't mention Anthony Goldstein other than the little bit of mentioning, because technically the only two of those characters with really weird racy names that we talked about were the ones that have prominent roles in the books. I said, didn't Harry just take enough money from the vault to cover his expenses? Yeah, so, like, if you had to live off of the amount of money that Harry had, it's probably reasonable to assume that you would exhaust that money supply within an amount of time. I can't give you an exact amount for obvious reasons. I don't know what everything costs in the Harry Potter universe.
So, was just doing a little bit of reading. It looks like the Weasleys actively are choosing to be poor, but even then...
That doesn't make any sense, though, because people don't choose poverty. That sounds like bad writing at that point.
Well, because, like, from what I'm reading, it's like, you know, their father has a salary of, like, a high-level administrator, effectively, or at least that's what it's theorized, but that high earning equals high expenses. So, you know, if it's not that, they also are an old family, so they're also getting help from wealthy relatives. But they literally chose to live like that. Like, they chose to live out on that farm.
Which means that this is an example of J.K. Rowling's writing being shitty.
Yeah, because...
No, those characters are poor because they chose to be poor. I'm sorry, Miss Joanne, who the fuck chooses that? Who the fuck chooses being in poverty? Nobody fucking chooses that. I'm sorry.
Because it basically... all of the kids are pissed off at the situation, but the parents are not. And so, literally, one of the working theories is they chose to have a plot of land so they didn't have to pay for a house. And they chose for Ron's mother to live as a stay-at-home mom. And so they chose to stretch his money to the, like, you know, freaking, you know, George Weasley's freaking money to the max. Because why the fuck not?
Halo says, it's a good point. Arthur does really like his job, but is generally looked down upon, so probably not well paid. I mean, maybe, but again, the concept that this family is poor because they chose to be poor, like, no, people choose naturalism or they choose minimalism, but they very rarely choose poverty. Poverty is a thing that is afflicted on you more than anything else. But moving into other areas that are like really problematic in the series that needed to be fixed. One last
thing real quick. So when remember when he went on that whole vacation, right? When he won the 700 galleons?
Yes. And then they blew it on a vacation.
So the conversion of galleons is every galleon is equal to 5 British pounds, right? So that 700 comes out to 3,500 British pounds, or for those that need it in American, it comes out to about $4,657.
Which is enough to go on a vacation.
Not sure if it's enough to go on a vacation with 7 kids, but, you know. Hey.
Yeah, that's one of those things where you're just like, you have to pick the areas that you're going to, such that they always have one of those really cheap kids menus.
That's why they went to Egypt.
Like, that's the only option you have there. Fatty says, I mean, how much is wizarding travel? Well, you gotta think. Their world seems to still be very, very ignorantly capitalistic, so they'd still have to afford hotel stay. They would still have to afford food.
Unless, of course, they have specific areas for wizards that are cheaper than normal, you know.
Yeah.
stuff.
But considering that the majority of the wizarding world seems to be just a quirky version of the regular world in the Harry Potter series, I don't know if that really works, because I think it's more likely that JK would just go, yeah, no, it's just like a regular hotel, only it's magical.
God, yeah.
Like, that's the amount of thought that she would put into it. But the next part that I was talking about on stream was about house elves. House elves are kind of like that.
Oh, God.
It's a huge sticking point for a lot of people, and I think you don't even have to remove the house elf slavery thing from Harry Potter to fix it. I think you just have to have the house elves owned by the shitty wizards. If your house elves are only owned by the hyper rich asshole aristocrats, and it's a thing where you can see that people other than just Hermione Granger have been trying to lobby against for years, suddenly it's a lot less shitty.
Okay. So, did you know that house elves are actually based off of something?
I mean, I assumed they are. She doesn't have an original bone in her body, but...
So they're based off of the British folk creature, the brownie. The brownies are small, ugly, brown-skinned creatures known for doing chores at night for households.
Okay.
And to free them was usually giving them, nice clothing, effectively, right? Now, granted, it's still akin to freaking, slaveries.
I mean, yeah, why did you...
all that,
why are you literally calling your slave creatures brownies? That feels kind of... feels kind of weird.
But basically, yeah, they're like little fairy or goblin-like creatures who appear at night and make mischief and do helpful tasks. But effectively, it was just a British... It was just a British freaking, thing. It's kind of weird. It's still not great. It's still problematic. And everything. Like, you could also call them, if you were in Scotland, Bruni, right? It would also be considered like a hobgoblin. And so it just performed various chores for the owners, and usually with farming. Human owners of the house usually would leave a bowl of milk or cream or some other offering to the brownie, usually by the fireplace. They were described as easily offended and will leave their homes forever if they have been insulted or in any way taken advantage of.
Okay, see, that's completely different than how we see house elves portrayed, though, because for the house elves, them getting insulted just makes them beat themselves.
But here's the thing: if they're angered, they would sometimes turn malicious, like into boggarts. Another creature you hear about in Harry Potter, but
you never see that anywhere in the Harry Potter literature.
No, we don't. That's kind of the thing.
Like, I guess that's another thing. Like, if you have it to where it is a relationship that is considered mutually beneficial and sought after by both parties, then that's not as bad. But in Harry Potter, every single instance of a house elf we see is a character getting abused.
So here's the other thing with the house elves, and this is exactly what JK took from the brownies. Gifts of clothing. If a family gives a brownie a gift of clothing, he will leave forever and refuse to work for the family. The first mention of this was of one disappearing after being presented with clothes came from a book called The Discovery of Witchcraft, which was published in 1584.
Okay.
And so they would normally recite couplets before disappearing, such as like, red breeks and ruffled sark, you'll no get me to do your work.
So basically what you're saying, if I have this right, is that it is a somewhat problematic bit of old folklore. Yep. Like a lot of old folklore is.
And the gift of clothing, real quick, it was an insult.
And they left because they were insulted, and that was why. So it's a
Yep. Whereas,
so it's a
and usually, they would wear a sackcloth.
so it's a somewhat problematic bit of folklore that J.K.
Yep.
Rowling took, and because she doesn't give a shit about the stuff she's adapting, she took something that was only mildly problematic if you look at it from a certain angle, and then decided to go, no. What if we took away every single part of this? Because the way that the brownies are described, the way you're describing them, is they are fae folk that trade favors for favors.
Effectively, and they also thrive off of like relationships and stuff like that.
And that makes sense for fae folks, because fae folk in all literature for the most part, if there is a fae, they trade info for info, they trade secrets for secrets, and they trade favors for favors. So if you're giving them cream and honey and things like that, that's also something that happens in, say, Dresden Files. You give fae folk sweets, they like it, they will do things for you in exchange, which is completely different to house elves, where it is in every possible form and interpretation a form of slavery from the top down. Also, how's it going, Guitar Rocker? Yes, we are talking about Harry Potter right now. We are trying to figure out which problematic aspects of Harry Potter can we change to make the books suck a lot less. And in so doing, we are trying to modify them so that they are as close to unchanged as we can get, so that we are not just writing a different piece of literature. So, like, how do you have the goblins still to have Gringotts without it being anti-Semitic? Okay, well, you have other races work at Gringotts, and you have goblins work in other areas of society. To divorce them from that, the goblins are the bankers who aren't allowed to do magic because they're subhuman. Like, that's how you do that for the most part. You could also not make them with really long noses. That would also help, probably. But
it also doesn't help with the with the house elves. It doesn't help that they are, not only are they made like sure based off of the brownie, and they like, they want to like, help as long as they have something in exchange. But when you create an entire creature that's based around serving, with like willingly serving for nothing, I don't really think there's a way to fix it. You just got to completely replace it. Because even freaking in the movie for Goblet of Fire, they just straight up took the whole Hermione subplot of Spew
and
out.
They just threw it out of the... So there were people in the chat who didn't know about Spew, I guess because they'd only watched the movies. And yeah, Spew was a thing. I thought it was book 5, but I guess it is book 4. Spew is the thing that Hermione put forward to try to liberate house elves. And she would do it by like putting bits of clothing. She would knit mass amounts of clothing to place around Hogwarts so that an elf might accidentally pick them up. And this was considered a shitty thing to do in the story, and it shouldn't be, because the house elves are largely not treated very well. I know that in Hogwarts specifically, they are treated better, and when Dobby tries to negotiate for a wage, he does get a wage, but we see that he's the exception to the rule.
You know what? I think I know what it is. You know what it is? Yeah. I think the issue, right, is that you're dealing with Hermione, who comes from the modern world, and you're dealing with the wizarding world that's stuck in the 1950s.
Right, but so it's weird, right? Because the way that the story shows it is that Hermione is the uncultured person who just doesn't understand the wizard world. That's the way it comes off in the books, when in reality, it's Hermione knows better, and she sees something that's wrong, and she spoke up about it. I have to be right back. 2 seconds. I apologize.
Fair enough.
Just don't corrupt my chat.
All right, everyone. I need you all to pull out your best arson emotes and throw them in chat as hard as you can. Fucking send it. Full fire. Arson! 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 That's right. Burn this place to the ground. Become one with the fire. Become one with the fire! True, but I could corrupt you into my own special kind of corruption. Like, for example, did you guys know that technically the way Swiss cheese is made is by rats fucking it? That's why there's so many holes in Swiss cheese. It's because rats have done that. There you go. I've given you plenty of lovely brain knowledge.
Okay. I have returned. I had to pee very bad. I apologize. I was sitting there adjusting constantly, going, how can I survive the next 10 minutes?
So you don't want to know what I just said?
Go ahead and say it again. I'm sure I won't regret it.
You know, Swiss cheese has all those holes because rats use it to fuck.
Unfortunately, I used to work in a shop that sold cheese, so I know it's actually formed by bacteria. But
smegma bacteria.
God damn it.
It's cultured.
So I guess like in terms of the house elves and the goblins and all of it, the broader problem is the racial stereotypes that exist within those races in Harry Potter, and just there are ways to fix it, but with the goblins, it's have better representation in different areas. With the house elves, it's move the house elves to exclusively be part of shitty families and make Hermione not the laughingstock of the wizarding world when she makes spew. That would probably do a lot of favors to everything.
With the goblins, I feel like with goblins, you almost need to create a whole new race simply because it's not J.K. Rowling's portrayal of goblins isn't necessarily the issue. It's the issue with goblins as a race themselves and the fact that it was based off of a Jewish stereotype.
Yeah, like that's...
I think...
Because like when I started hearing all of the... Because like, as somebody who grew up with Harry Potter, and when I started hearing all of the different ways that the goblins were bad, I'm just like, I understand that, but also that's the problem with goblins in World of Warcraft. That's also... Like, you can go through a lot of different fantasy and just go, yeah, this is just how goblins are shown a lot of the time. They were hoarders first and foremost, and then they go from hoarders to bankers. It's not a hard leap. Ravi, thank you very much for resubscribing. Also, Van Briggs, thank you for redeeming your points for an... Oh, whoa.
You also missed an RR.
Did I? Let me go ahead and
did.
Get that. Nixie-chan, that was 21 minutes ago. Jesus, thank you for redeeming your points for an... You fucking degen. Do better. Be better.
Ara, you good little person.
Oh, Jesus. Ravi, I forgot to set up Lizzie. I am sorry. Let me get him set up. I always forget the secondary things on my streams. But what's another big issue in the way that Harry Potter was written in its original form? I think just in general, representation's probably one of the worst things in there. Like we already talked.
How about the whole thing with all magical creatures, especially sentient ones like the centaurs, are treated as lesser beings, even if they have intelligence and sentience.
They're all treated as lesser than the wizards.
Yeah, like because the centaurs, you actually see it with what's her name? I forget her name. She's the one that took over Hogwarts.
Oh, Umbridge.
Yeah, Umbridge. When she deals with the centaurs, there's literally an entire point where she talks about how they are beneath wizards, even though they are sentient and have emotions. And they are one of those. They're basically. I would say that the most apt representation is for Native Americans for those.
So controversial take. I'm actually okay with that, and my reason is this. Every character that we see engage in that kind of superiority rhetoric, for the most part in the series, is portrayed as a villain or a person that needs to be educated.
But the entirety of the wizarding world, sees them. Like that.
I understand from that perspective, but if you think about it through the lens of the characters that we are given, Harry doesn't think that way, Hagrid doesn't think that way, Dumbledore doesn't think that way. Once or twice Ron might think that, and then he gets his ass beat by Hermione. And I mean, I guess now that they're together later on in the series, I guess she tells him to sleep on the couch. I don't know. But I guess there is an argument to be made that Harry, Hagrid, Dumbledore, Hermione, they are the exceptions to the wizarding world as opposed to the rule. So I could understand. I could see that perspective.
Greetings, programs.
Because like that's the problem. Is like you have the Wizarding Wars that caused issues with, that did cause issues with the goblins. Hence why the goblins are under control of the wizarding government, despite the fact that they are sentient beings. You have the centaurs, who are sentient but are forced in the very specific reservation style, like
true
living conditions.
We never see anybody working in government from any of these other factions. The government is always just wizards. So yeah, you're right. You're actually right about that. I was looking at the front text and not looking at the subtext as a result. So that was my mistake.
No, you're good. But that is actually a very big thing that I've always saw there, and I'm like, that's kind of interesting, because like you think about the giants, they're treated just the same way. Like we see Hagrid, who's a half giant, but even then, he's literally like forced to live in a hut on his own on the Hogwarts grounds.
And he always has to. So like Hagrid's proud of his giant heritage, so he gets profiled for it, especially by the Malfoys. But when he, what's her name? The one who comes from not Durmstrang, but the girls' school.
Oh fuck, I forget.
I can't remember her name for the life of me, but I remember that when Hagrid points out that she's part giant, she gets like horribly offended by it. And that's just kind of a huge red flag to me, because that means that their society in general views, man, that's
half-breeds.
Which it just makes me think that their society has a thing with miscegenation. But instead of it being different races of people, like humans, it's different races of people, different races.
I mean, think about the whole thing with the mudblood thing that they had as well.
Yeah. And I mean, we saw that the conversations around mudbloods or just around muggleborns in Harry Potter, it's usually portrayed as something that is not a problem unless you're one of those pureblood assholes. So I'm not super concerned with that one, because we get the same kind of assholery in real life. That part I'm not. That part I don't have too much of an issue with, because it's usually the villains who do it. The squibs thing is weird to me, because the squib thing creates a whole nother layer of problems. You have to fix the magic system of Harry Potter for the squibs thing to be bad. And the reason the squibs thing is bad, my opinion, and if I'm off track on this, let me know. But my issue with it is that it's treated like a genetic defect. And it is treated as one of the only like disabilities in the wizarding world. And on top of that, it shows that being a wizard is something that is passed down through your blood as a genetic thing that sets you apart from other people and makes you better than them, because that's why they don't solve like medical problems for muggles. That's why they didn't do anything during World War II for the muggles when the Nazis were doing their thing. Like, the reason that wizards don't do any of that is because they consider themselves better than the muggles. And the rhetoric that's given in the series is, well, there's two bits of rhetoric that are given in the series. One bit is, well, we don't want to be trying to we don't want to have to use magic to fix all of their problems. They would never shut up about it, which is really shitty. And then the other one is when they talk about things like the Salem witch trials. But when they talk, when the Harry Potter series talks about the Salem witch trials, they talk about it as if it was a joke. Like, it literally says that when they burned witches, they just kind of laughed it off.
So now, let me actually present a hot take to you.
Okay.
There. I think the wizarding world actually participates in the genocide of a lot of magical creatures.
I mean, I don't think that's a hot take. They do that, generally speaking.
Well, Well, because I mean, it might be a hot take for some people. Because like, think about dragons, for example. How the fuck are you keeping these massive ass animals that can fly in the sky hidden from the entire world that isn't magical, right?
Without hunting them to near extinction.
And so they've got to be like an endangered species that is literally bred for sport.
And that's the thing, like,
so it's the only...
I feel like dragons are portrayed really bad in Harry Potter.
Mhm.
Because, again, I'm going to keep on going back to the Dresden Files. There is all of one dragon that we meet in the Dresden Files, to my knowledge. But that dragon, like in a lot of other media, is a shapeshifter that hides in plain sight in humanity in order to make sure that nothing bad happens to him. But when Chicago gets attacked by a giant old god, not old god titan, but she is an old god, but she is not an old god. Because the old gods like Cthulhu and shit are confirmed to be things in Dresden as well. But when she comes to attack Chicago, one of the people that comes to Chicago's defense is that dragon. He shapeshifts into his dragon form and then tries to square off with her. Like,
right.
Robbie says outsiders. Yeah, they're called outsiders in Dresden, but they're old ones. That's what they are. They are the old ones. So
I mean, the only other thing I could think of is maybe they do the whole Nooch Commander thing and fit them inside of like, you know, a weird magical space that's bigger on the inside.
We have 1,000 magical zoos. That's how we're handling this, I guess. I guess there's another major issue that exists in the series. It's a twofold one. One of them is LGBTQ representation in general. Outside of Grindelwald, which is a retcon for the World War II stuff, and Dumbledore, which was a retcon from the books in general, we don't have LGBTQ characters in Hogwarts at all. It's like there's a zero zone where anybody... In a world where magic is limitless... Imagine there being just one person with gender dysphoria, and they just go, yeah, we got a potion for that. Here you go.
So this is where my optimistic side comes out on this kind of shit, right? In my opinion, right? The best representation of like anything LGBT related, right?
Yeah.
Is to allow for the characters themselves, the people themselves, to just interact normally. Like, realistically speaking, whether someone's gay, trans, lesbian, non-binary, whatever, unless you put very specific focus on it, no one's gonna realistically know because it's just allowed to naturally flow, right?
So, but the way you do that is, as an example, there's an overt way and there's a non-overt way. The overt way is you make your main character gay and you have them have a gay love interest. That's the overt way. Or one of the main characters, whether or not it's a POV character. Another way that you can do it that may seem less forceful, though, is just your character is walking through the courtyard for Hogwarts on Christmas, and he sees two guys holding hands. And that's it. That's all it has to be. Just like it's a background element that confirms that this happens.
So I actually want to bring this up since this actually really pissed me off. Sirona Ryan from Hogwarts Legacy.
Okay.
So everyone got really pissed off at the character's name. That's as far as it went, right?
That was the trans character, right?
Yes, that was the trans character. Now, here's the thing. First off, Sirona is a Celtic goddess. That is an actual name of a Celtic goddess, is Sirona. It's not separated into Sir and Rona. No, it is Sirona, right?
So it requires not looking into things to get angry at it.
Now, secondly, if you actually played the game, there's actually a goblin that sits inside of the three broomsticks and mentions, oh yeah, Sirona used to be a dude, But then when they left, one day they came back and they were a woman, and everyone supported them since.
I think that just goes to show that some of the people behind the Harry Potter games are better writers than J.K. Rowling.
But like legit, that's the Goblin says that, and they literally talk about how she's great. She runs a great establishment. She's an amazing person, and they would hate to see anything happen to her. Like, because they care about her because she's a part of the community. They don't give a shit about her changing her gender. They are actually supportive. But would people actually tell you about that? No, they'd rather get upset about a fucking name.
I think so. And this isn't really a hot take. This is fairly normal. I think most aggravation at Hogwarts Legacy was aimed at J.K. Rowling, and anything else about that game ended up being a side piece that was influenced by it. So, like, as an example, J.K. Rowling is transphobic. There is no ifs, ands, or buts. She is. She, even after trans people lost their rights under the Equal Rights Act last Wednesday, posted a picture of her smoking a cigar with a martini saying, "I love it when a plan comes together," which just makes you look like a fucking cartoon villain, right? So that is irrefutable that this is a transphobic, bigoted piece of human garbage. Then, when you look at Harry Potter, you start looking at everything in Harry Potter through the lens of who she is as a person. And then you find a lot of things, Kingsley Shacklebolt, the slavery stuff with the elves, the goblins having a bunch of anti-Semitic tropes. You start finding all of these things that are a problem. And so your red alarm bells are raised for everything Harry Potter related. Now suddenly nothing good can come from this because you've seen so much bad come from it. As an example, on Blue Sky, after the ruling, I just posted, "Hey, it's okay to pirate the Wizard books. It's okay to pirate the Wizard game." And somebody got angry saying, "No, you shouldn't let her have any influence on anything ever." And I'm like, so I have old copies of my books. I gain nothing by forcing myself never to go and reread them ever again in my life. For no reason. Like, I'm at that point, I'm literally doing the virtue signaling thing that we get made fun of for doing all the time, even when we're not doing that. Like, that's what that actually is. There's nothing pragmatic about that.
Yeah.
So, also, there was a thing that was said before, but I do not see it. Ravi says vinyl. It was the content of the topics covered earlier. I'm not sure the details as I got here late. So I haven't talked about the political topics yet. This conversation happened, and then Yoruvexa raided me, and the conversation has continued because I roped her in. So,
yes.
I think in about half an hour, she's going to start doing the thing where she gets delirious from hunger, which has happened before.
I mean, considering I'm still recovering from a cold, I can do my Vanellope von Schweetz voice.
Okay, well, let's hear it.
Ralph, we gotta save my game, Ralph. We gotta save him before the clap of my ass cheeks alert the guards, Ralph.
That is a child! Guitar Rocker says it's one thing to already own the products before J.K. Rowling said, but yeah, so I do agree that, like, having money make its way to J.K. Rowling in any way is a thing that should be discouraged. I'm okay with that. But I'm not going to say, like, if somebody goes and gets a cracked version of Hogwarts Legacy and then starts playing that, I'm not going to jump on their ass and go, "No, you're letting yourself be influenced by the evil." But the next thing that's really, really an issue in Harry Potter, outside of just representation, is how lycanthropy is showcased in Harry Potter. It's just an AIDS metaphor, and there's something kind of weird about that to me. Just a little bit.
I'm sorry, sirs. You have lycanthropy. You have 6 months left to
Oh,
live.
that is unfortunate. That is unfortunate. So for anybody to get an idea of why this is problematic, Gloomberra says, wait, is it? I don't remember. Okay, so lycanthropy in Harry Potter, so the thing that turns you into a werewolf, it's a metaphor for AIDS, and one of the most prominent people with lycanthropy in the series outside of the teacher, whose name I'm blanking on names for some reason. I don't know why.
Professor Lupin?
Yeah. Wolf. So one of the other most prolific werewolves in the series is Greyback. And Greyback is shown to be almost strictly a predator of children. So it's really weird to have your AIDS metaphor, which is tied very heavily to AIDS metaphor, have a child predator as one of your most prominent characters. I know that he's a villain. I get that. But this is the same person who wrote a book under a pseudonym where the main plot is somebody dressed up as a woman in order to assault a girl in a bathroom, which has really weird fucking implications knowing who JK is.
So you want to know something funny?
Not if you're staring at me like that.
So fun fact. Did you know that Remus's name is a direct reference to the mythological Roman twin that was raised by a wolf?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's literally his name is like, oh hey, I can't be creative about anything other than a wolf, so might as well be Wolf basically.
I mean, Fenrir Greyback is also just Wolf again.
Severus Snape.
So
I wonder if he got his name because the Severus his nether region.
I think he did that because he wasn't able to get any of the Molliacy. But not Molly. Wait, what was Harry's mom's name? What the fuck? Why am I thinking it was Molly? Lily. That's it. That's it. Aether88 and Lexikitty, thank you both for giving me your points for Ara, you fucking degens. So
No. They're not degens yet. I need to make them into.
I mean, you can do that at some point. I'll raid you, and you can have your way with them. Chain them up. Get the fluffy one. Thank you for redeeming your points, friend. Oh, whoa. Goddamn Fennec! Die in a fucking fire! Fucking. Oh, there, you got your thing. Eat shit. So, knowing who JK is and knowing how she has been with, here is a minority group and they're going to use the thing they are known for as a minority group in conservative circles as a way to assault children. I don't know, maybe that's just kind of weird to me. Maybe there's some weirdness there in my brain.
So, here's a problematic question. How did Hogwarts continue to operate despite all of the safety issues, right?
I think it's because of its legacy. So remember that Hogwarts has a board, and that board is controlled by old money because Lucius Malfoy is on that board. And going to Hogwarts is seen as a prestigious thing. It is seen as a thing that if you graduate from Hogwarts, that is a stamp of honor for you.
But would it have been safer if Dumbledore wasn't there? Because Lucius wanted Dumbledore gone from there. So, realistically speaking, Dumbledore kind of kept putting the students at risk.
I mean, technically speaking, he put a handful of students at risk. This is true because he used them as plot ploys in his plot to kill Voldemort once and for all. But
thinks about the Philosopher's Stones and the troll in the dungeon where Slytherin had to go to the dungeon because that's where their house is.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, fuck Slytherins, okay? That's another weird thing. The house system is strange because it's supposed to be that you go to Slytherin because you have ambition. But more often than not, Slytherin just ends up being where the villains are. And don't get me wrong, Magic the Gathering kind of did this in reverse, where black was the color of villainy for the longest time in the story, and then eventually it became the color of ambition. So villains usually have ambition, so they usually would have black in their color, and that was the way that they kind of circumvented that. But it is kind of weird, especially since you went, oh, here's the one Asian character, they're in Ravenclaw because they care about math. Like, that is just kind of strange, you know?
It's probably fucked up to find out that I'm a Ravenclaw then.
Yeah, but you're, white.
Yeah, but you've heard half the shit that comes out of my mouth.
Yeah, but you're
Doesn't that make you
white.
question things?
No, it doesn't, because you hyperfixate on things and then you learn more than there is to know comfortably about a subject. I feel like you're in Ravenclaw because of autism. I think that's accurate to say. The people go into Gryffindor because they're jocks. People go into Slytherin because they're villains. People go into Hufflepuff because they're useless, and people go into Ravenclaw because of autism. There we go.
No. Hufflepuff knows how to fucking cook.
Okay, you're right.
Have you seen, as much as I hate to say this, have you seen a single goddamn skinny Hufflepuff other than
You're
the
right.
freaking...
Hufflepuff is filled with male wives. You're right.
Damn right.
Lenari says Cedric
No wonder why
was a good
Cedric-
meat shield. Of course, he was wide enough to block the bullets.
I mean, hey, the moonlight made him sparkle.
God damn it. Different poorly written story. But
I mean, hey, you know what? How about this? J.K. Rowling doesn't have an original enough bone in her body, so she had to copy Space Wizards, which was already a terribly written story.
see, I haven't read Space Wizards, so wait, you're talking about Star Wars.
Yes, I'm talking about Star Wars.
Okay, look, I will fight you because Star Wars at least is copied from other material too.
But Star Wars was still kind of poorly written if you think about it.
It was written by the seat of his pants more than anything. Hot take. Star Wars Episode 4, 5, and 6 are better movies than 1, 2, and 3, but Star Wars 1, 2, and 3 have a better written plot than 4, 5, and 6.
I would say if you remove Episode 2 and you just substitute the entirety of the TV series...
Well, then it's just better written,
1...
period. Then it's just better
Yeah,
written,
just better
period.
written.
I'm sorry. Episode
Yeah.
2 is the worst written out of everything in the entire Star Wars series. No. Episode 9 exists.
Wait, no, Suris,
Episode 9 exists.
Suris. No. Suris. Your whole shtick is politics. How can you not love Episode 2?
No, I love Episode 1 and 3. And I get enough of my politics from 1 and 3 without having to hear the quote about sand.
Oh, yeah? So, Misa Jaja Binksa. Misa Bombad Good.
Okay, it's okay. You've got massive tits. As long as I don't have to think about hearing that voice during hanky pank time, I'll be okay.
Misa Jerka you off, boy.
Never mind. Boner gone. Halo says Aunt Stillwood. He was ungooned so fast. Jesus Christ. Also, okay, so...
God, I died there for a second. Hi.
There's also the weirdness in Harry Potter where every character's looks are tied directly to their motivations as a character. So Rita Skeeter is a liar. That is what she does. She lies for news to make money. She's described as having a square jawline and having large hands and mannish features, which sounds kind of sort of really transphobic in hindsight, knowing who she is. Writing this woman character who lies about everything and has a lot of mannish features, makes their money by lying to people. That's weird.
So then shouldn't Harry Potter's name be his whole journey to find the best kind of weed in the country?
Scary Movie already beat you to that joke.
God damn it.
But, okay, so it's not just there, though. Think about Harry's extended family. None of them are described with any kinds of positive traits, and Dudley, the only time that he's described as having more positive features physically is near book 7. Like, as you get closer to book 7, and he starts becoming more of a respectable character. Because he's an asshole, but kind of sympathetic by book 5, and by book 7, he's just a decent human being in comparison to his parents. Like, it's kind of weird. Like, yes, these characters are fat, therefore they're bad. Slughorn is fat, therefore he's also bad, and only wants to ape on the success of others. Harry's
But then
uncle
again,
is fat.
Dudley went from being fat to being basically built like a linebacker, though.
Yes, and remember that he got built like a linebacker around the time that he was in book 5, when he started being a little less terrible. Like, he was still terrible. There's a whole bit where, like, they were talking about him smoking, and he had friends with him that he wanted to go bully Harry with, but that's shit that he was effectively doing in every book until then. That's one of the first times we see a scene between Harry and Dudley that's not fully antagonistic, when the Dementors start coming around. And Dudley comes to Harry's defense with the Dementors, at least to a degree.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That is true.
K. Charles says, ain't that like saying the stagnant pond water is pure compared to the sewer runoff? Lenari says, Tonks? What about Tonks? I mean...
Oh god, Tonks.
Like...
Tonks.
She has the ability to transform a lot of parts of her body. She's effectively a changeling.
Well, okay, so her full name is Nymphadora Tonks.
I like sex a lot, Tonks.
She was a half-blood witch and a metamorphagus, right? Now, a metamorphagus is a witch or wizard that has the ability to change their physical appearance without the need of a polyjuice potion.
That's why she was an Auror that focused on stealth.
But it created issues because there was a concern over... It's left unknown on if they have to register with the Ministry of Magic like Animagi have to.
Fair.
Because while it's rare, it's a rare ability, it is something that they are, born into. And it was hinted at that her abilities in regards to that may have actually gotten her discriminated against.
Yeah. Jet Fatigue says Tonks is gender fluid and you can't change my mind. I mean, I agree with that to a degree. I think she saw herself as a woman and therefore chose to stay in the body of a woman because she could choose whatever body she wanted. Like, that is who she was.
She gets to be a food.
She does.
She gets to have.
She does get to peg Mooney. You're right.
No, she got married to Lupin.
Yeah, I said Mooney. Remember his nickname when he was running around with James was Mooney.
Right.
Yeah. Gloomy says that just sounds like a hentai plot. Look, I have some material that is currently labeled as the good shit in a Discord of mine that I will not be sharing with you. But PJ Blazer says, wasn't it Aunt Petunia who defended him? So in that moment with the Dementors specifically, I think it was Aunt Petunia who said, no, Dementors do exist because I know that they're a thing, they're real. But it was after the Dementors in general that Dudley started to turn his positions on Harry in general. Professor Jessel says, Suris, please Please what? Oh, no. No, sorry. I'm not giving it. I'm not giving that to you. Yes, it says that don't mention it if you don't want to share with the class. No, I'm the kind of person who goes, who chews gum loudly in a classroom and then says, by the way, this is the last piece, very loudly to everybody.
So what I'm hearing is, how's that washer? How's Washer-kun?
I don't want to talk about it.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear.
I don't want to talk about it. Renita says no. It was Mrs. Fig. She was a squib. Was it Mrs. Fig's? I know that Mrs. Fig knew that they existed, and that's and she gave like she gave chocolate,
something like that.
She gave chocolate to Harry and Dudley when that happened. Robbie says I'd put all the remaining Ravathia savings on Hermione pegging Ron as a treat.
Oh God.
Renita, thank you for redeeming your points for an OWO. And also, Zamian, fuck you. I'm kidding. Thank you for redeeming your points for an you fucking degen. Lenari says Mrs. Fig chased off the Dementors to get the boys home. Was that I need to go and reread the books again because I don't remember the exact details behind what happened there. I don't remember her chasing off the Dementors because she couldn't have. She didn't have the... Like, she literally couldn't have conjured a Patronus.
That is true.
Robbie says, no, it was Harry's Patronus. Yeah, because, like, by book 5, Harry can conjure a Patronus. It wouldn't have been Fig, because Mrs. Fig goes up and says, put that away when she gets up there, because she knows what a wand is, she knows what a Patronus is. So didn't she try to throw things at the Dementors? Again, I don't remember those specifics. I'll need to reread the books again, which I was already planning on doing anyway. It just, rereading the books feels really icky right now. I know that I did that whole spiel about how, yeah, you can still enjoy this and read it, just please pirate it. But there is still a part of me that's like, man, this is written by the person that stripped human rights away from my friends. Fuck this bitch. Nymphadora Tonks literally translates to likes sex penis. Jesus Christ. Let's see here. What else do we have that's like really problematic in the series that needs to be fixed to make that series less of a shit show? Lenari says, and somehow Tonks was cool for a bit. I mean, yes, but...
Well, you see, what we could do is very simple, right? It's called rewrite the whole thing from scratch without J.K. Rowling.
Okay, so what HBO is doing.
But we don't talk about HBO because that's going to cause drama because Black Severus Snape.
It's okay for Severus Snape to be black. But yeah, no, so I am going to be interested to see how that series comes out, not because of the casting. I don't give a shit which actors you get in there. If the actors are good actors, I don't care. But I do want to see if HBO actually goes, here's Harry Potter, but written by not bigots.
If that ever happens.
Said Lenari says she's not involved, not getting royalties from the new show, so she sold all the rights to Harry Potter to Warner Brothers. I don't know how much she actually gets from the show, but once again, I would like to advocate for ethical piracy. Halo says, or just write your own series. There's more baggage than things worth saving. You're not wrong. So I understand that, but that's a conversation stopper as opposed to an interesting conversation. For me, an interesting conversation is, how do you take this otherwise problematic thing and shape it into something more positive? That's way more fun to me than just going, no, start from scratch, fuck that. If you want to write your own thing, go ahead and do that. But I also like the idea of grabbing something and modifying it to be less of a shit show than it is. Glimmy says, make Harry a trans guy, make Ron non-binary, make Hermione gender fluid, just to spite J.K. Rowling.
Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ. Jesus fucking Christ.
All of it. It's entirely fine. So a lot of fan works make Harry have Indian ancestry. That's fine. Like, just having better representation in that series in general isn't a bad thing.
I am so sorry. I forgot my hand tracking is on, and I was shaking up a drink real quick, and
you
it
were
looked,
just you were just covering your boobies.
No. It tracked my hand tracking.
K. Charles says, I really don't.
So, like, literally.
Yeah, it was just that. It was just that. K. Charles says, I don't get why people think that the authors or the actors from the film should be loyal to JK. Yeah, no, absolutely not. There's no world in which they should be loyal, and I'm so glad. I'm so glad that both Daniel Radcliffe and Emma Watson made very, very loud public statements about how shitty Joanne was being.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sid Page says somebody already did LGBT Harry Potter. It's called Harriet Porber. Okay, but that's again, to me personally, that's less fun. Because that's just going, hey, let's twist this real quick. Let's go ahead and twist it real quick. Which is fine and has its own fun. But to me, changing the series as it is to be less of an issue is like taking a commander precon you get for Magic the Gathering and upgrading it. You're taking something that has a lot of problematic bits that need to be fixed, and it's a puzzle to figure out how to make that thing better than what it was.
How about a precon for Warhammer?
I can do that. The Warhammer precons are really easy to upgrade. Which one?
Battle Sisters.
There isn't a Battle Sisters one, but I know which one.
No, I mean for the actual Warhammer 40k tabletop.
Oh yeah, I'm not doing shit for the actual tabletop. Yeah, fuck that.
No, the actual tabletop, trying to upgrade that shit is what it would take.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that. I would do it with the Warhammer deck that exists in Magic. KTR says, if you were to do your own series, would you do the Magic has a genetic component thing? No, fuck that. So I think that doing the Magic has a genetic component thing, the only way you can make that work is by having Magic be something that your genes can give you a predisposition to, like somebody who, has better predispositions for being a linebacker because their body is built better for it. Like, that's what you would need to do. And you could make it more interesting by having it so that people have better dispositions for different kinds of magic.
You know what actually has a better magic system than Harry Potter?
Everything?
I sent it to you in DMs.
Because like everything has a better magic system than Harry Potter, realistically.
It's in DMs. It's perfection.
Let's see. What do we got here? I don't know what that is.
Okay, it's an anime called Mashle.
Yeah.
Literally, the main character, he doesn't have the ability to do magic, but he's so goddamn strong, it looks like he's doing magic. And the way magic is basically determined is like you have a line on your face. The number of lines effectively shows how strong your magic is.
Okay.
He has to have a fake line on it because he, having no magic, is kind of a forbidden thing in the world. But you can actually exhaust your magic supply. You do tend to be more proficient in one type of magic over others because of like the way your heritage is and stuff like that. So
it's unordinary.
It's unordinary.
Okay, because that's the... Sorry. It's the plot of Unordinary if the writer had kept the plot going as it was for the first, 80 chapters, as opposed to what it ended up being, where it was... Spoiler alert for people who are reading Unordinary and aren't caught up. The main character actually has the strongest power of everyone because they can mimic everyone else's powers, and they can do it where they're just slightly better at it than whoever they're mimicking, so they're technically stronger than everyone in the world.
But there's one better part about Mashle. He's aggressively autistic.
I love the Dresden Files. Kings Die Twice, thank you very much for the follow. And Chris Stork, thank you for the follow as well. Thank you. Jeopardy says, oh, so they're the Kirito. That's the issue that I ran into with Unordinary, is that, like, I really liked the plot, and then the character started running around with a bag on his head as a way to hide his identity so he could start bodying everybody with his super uber human powers. And I get less interested in the plot when your character is the strongest and the bestest at everything all the time, actually. It's just...
But imagine being the strongest and the worst at the same time.
Webmage says he's limited to the ones he can see the effects of, which is most of the powers that exist in that world, to be honest.
Anyways, I think my voice is reaching its limit at the moment.
That's fair. We have been here for an hour and a half talking about a series that is near and dear to my heart, but also mid as fuck.
Exactly. And we're not going to even start talking about the cursed child.
I don't want to talk about the cursed child. I expressly don't want to do that.
But paradoxes.
No, I'm good. I'm good not dealing with it. It's so funny to me that that bitch hasn't written a single good thing since that series. And that series gets worse and worse with age.
Yeah.
Renia says, my turn to get in there. I can't do two of you. Anyway, thank you for hopping on. Where can people find you?
You're welcome. Where can people find me? Well, they can find me here on Twitch.
Okay, but yeah, but what's your...
Living in between the bosom of your pink cleavage.
I mean, that's not a Twitch channel. What's the name of your Twitch channel, you dork?
Okay. My name of my Twitch channel is Yorvexa.
Yeah.
My Twitter is also Yorvexa.
Yeah.
My YouTube is also Yorvexa. My Bansley is also Yorvexa.
Okay. That's so cool and quirky.
Link, please.
I can just do this, I believe, right?
To be fair, I just kind of shitpost with the Bansley though.
Louis Boogie says, how do I spell that? Yoruvexa.
Hang on. There you go.
There you are.
Hey, look!
Baha!
Look, I can use the shout-out command.
You can. You did it. I'm so proud of you.
I can use it. I know. I'm so proud of myself,
now, fuck
too.
off.
That's... I'd rather fuck on.
Goodbye, or I'm not making you curry again.
No, please. Your curry was so good. It was orgasmic.
Goodbye.
Anyways, bye.
Hey, thanks for making it to the end of the video. I really could not do any of this without all of you. Those of you watching, and especially those of you who support me on Patreon. I wanted to go ahead and take a minute to thank all of you who do that, because with YouTube being what it is these days, I really cannot do this full time without the support from each and every one of you. Those people would be Red Joker, Purple Poundini, Jemshin, Britzkrieg, Jupe the Malignant, Michael, Ravalern, Mabbity Babbity, Astral Frontier, Tales of Atonement, Nixie Chan, Kiri Artemis, Victorian Alchemist, I'm not saying the last part of that, and you know that, Leela Ururaka, Arcton Arclacier, Kiratorian, Dren Hadamata, Jordan M, John L, Lord Bleck, Smiling Game Master, and Fireshard. Thank you so very much. But since you're here, why not go ahead and try watching another one? There should be one that's on the screen right now. And if you are a patron of mine, I wanted to go ahead and thank you again for all of your support. There is still a video you could press though, if you'd like. I would appreciate it just a little bit.